I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to recognize a quorum visually. We'll go around the room in a minute, but let's stand, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mayor Karan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. Remind everybody that we are being webcasted, and so what you may say may indeed be used against you.
Read everything. There's nothing to read.
Okay, well, let's go around the room. Just introduce the members here as well as our guest. Obviously, you know me and Sam. Mayor?
Yes, Jean Garant, member of the council.
Jim Longo, member of the council.
John Corrado, member of the council.
Frank Trotta, member of the council.
Carol Gomes, president of the Stony Brook Alumni Association.
Ed Walter, president of the University Senate.
Marissa Trachtenberg from the President's Office.
Mallory Locklear, Secretary of the Graduate Student Organization. Diane Weir, member of the board, just in time.
Councilman.
Good.
Lane Crossan, VP for External Relations.
Matt Whalen, VP for Strategic Initiative.
Joel Saltz, chair of the new Department of Biomedical Informatics.
Ken Krushansky, dean of the medical school.
Volcano Police, VP for Information Technology.
Susan Blum, Chief Counsel, Stony Brook University.
Ruben Fasnack, CEO of Stony Brook University and Hospital.
Peter Bajan, Vice President of Student Affairs.
Lyle Holmes, Vice President of Finance.
Dexter Bailey, Vice President for Advancement.
Carolyn Doro, Executive Assistant to the President.
Mark Maculitis, Associate VP for Budget.
Lauren Shepard, Media Relations Officer.
Joan Dickinson, Director of Community Relations. Carol Bailey, President of the Stony Brook Health Sciences Center Chapter Community.
And David?
David Conover, Interim Vice President for Research. Good morning, everyone.
Good. Hello. All right. What a crowd. Very good. Welcome all. Good morning. I'm sure you're all tired of the snow, or most of you are tired of the snow like I am. Fred is shaking his head. No, he loves it.
Love it.
He loves it. She just came back from Vermont last night, probably, and enjoying it. No. I am sick of it, so I'm ready for spring and pitchers and catchers report in about a week, and so I'm ready for that. We need to approve the minutes of December 9th. Take a motion by Jim, seconded by Frank. Any comments, additions, revisions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. My chairman's report, very brief. One thing to report, and then we have a business item to take care of. Last time, at our last meeting on December 9th, I let you know that we were heading up to Albany 2 days later to have the governor make the announcements of the Regional Economic Development Council Round 3 awards. And I'm sure you've read by now, but happy to report, to the extent you haven't, that the Long Island region, remember there were 10 of them, we were the #1 winner out of all 10. Again, brought back another $83 million to our region, but it included a number of projects for Stony Brook. And one of the largest recipient of funds was a $2 million state contributions towards Building 3 over at the Research Park, which will help Sam and Dexter and others as they try to leverage those state dollars with a combination of other capital dollars and private dollars to complete that third building, as well as a number of other projects that Stony Brook will be the beneficiary of. So in 3 rounds, Long Island region has won twice, and out of all 3 rounds, Stony Brook has been the recipient now of probably close to $10 million or more through the economic development process. So all good news for our region, and certainly for Stony Brook. And happy to be a part of it. Sam and I have signed up for another year. And,
The pay is good.
The pay is good. And Jim co-chairs one of our work groups, and so we have a good contingent, on the council, and looking forward to another good year. Because the governor has already announced in the state round 4 funding another $700 million that the 10 regions will compete for, and information will be shared in the spring as that gets underway. it's more of a summer-driven process, late spring, summer-driven process. In terms of business, there was a late entry into the agenda. You should have had it on the packages or the information that I think Susan sent out. Susan here? No? One of our many legal obligations as council members is to recommend the naming of buildings that go up to the SUNY Board of Trustees for the official dotting of the i's and crossing of the t's. And we have the honor of naming our new campus recreation center here on the campus. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's certainly worthwhile. And maybe, Sam, if there's room there, the spring meeting might be a good place to have that there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we could all see it. And a gentleman who has a long history of involvement at Stony Brook, Walter Horries. We'd like to name the building after Walter. Should be a resolution before you. Walter is also the father of Marilyn Simons, and we all know the major commitment that Marilyn and Jim have had at Stony Brook for years, as well as the huge Simons effect of his incredibly generous gift that he announced about 2 years ago, for Stony Brook University. And so, but Walter himself had involvement with the design of some buildings here on this campus, a long history and commitment to our university as well. And so I'm going to move to name the campus recreation center, to name it the Walter Horries Recreation Center. I see a second by Diana. Any comments or questions on the motion?
I think it's wonderful. Someone dedicated so much, and his daughter, a graduate here. I read that it was very interesting, so I think it's a wonderful thing.
Right?
And just another comment, it doesn't always rely on the money that's being given, even though it came through the back door in this regard, but his commitment and his good example and promotion, I think it's a great person to have.
Thank you, Mayor. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion unanimously carries, and I'll now will recommend this and send it up to the SUNY Board of Trustees. If you need me to sign that today, I'll do that today, guys. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam for the President's report.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you for that. Two people who really helped literally build Stony Brook University, so it's nice to be able to honor both of them. I'm not going to talk about, you have my report, I'm not going to talk about the state budget because we'll cover that in Elaine's report on legislative asks, so we'll do it then. I would say it's kind of a mixed blessing for us, but we'll go through it in more detail in a second. We've had some really great continued success in fundraising, and I want to congratulate really all the senior leadership who are involved in that, and Dexter, of course, and all the work that his team does. And Ken has been making great inroads in fundraising. And probably have a list in front of you, but probably the biggest one and the most prominent one was from Lalit and Convita Ball, who donated $3.5 million to support a cyclotron for imaging Stony Brook medicine. So some of the amazing things we're going to do with PET MRI and so on are based on being able to generate radioisotopes. So you have to be able to generate particular kinds of radioactive tracers. So you can actually visualize things like brain function, visualize functioning of the heart, other organs. And so you have to be able to generate these things on site. In other words, they have such short half-lives. They're radioactive materials that have such short half-lives. You can't just buy them from a store and have them shipped. You actually have to generate on-site near the machine. Some of them have half-lives in minutes, essentially. So cyclotron is absolutely key to having a state-of-the-art imaging program. And so building one here is going to be very exciting. Again, the balls are helping make that happen. So it's a very exciting gift and something we're really pleased to receive. I want to talk very briefly. I had a chance to go to the White House. So I was one of 100 or so university presidents and other leaders in education who was invited by President Obama and the First Lady, who hosted a White House summit on education, essentially. And the goal was really to talk about economically disadvantaged students and how we improve their access to education as well as the outcomes of their graduation. That was really the point of the summit. And it was very inspiring. We had a closed-door meeting with the Secretary of Education first. Very frank exchange. Some of you may know the Obama administration, up till now, their main focus on higher education had just been it costs too much, it costs too much, it costs too much, without really talking about some of the more important issues as far as we're concerned, again, about completion and about quality. And I think it was good to talk to the Secretary because we were able to drive home the fact that this emphasis just on cost has actually had a backlash in that it's led to people talking about, well, is it really worth it to get a college education because it's so expensive? Ignoring all the data that's out there that says that just getting that bachelor's degree as opposed to having a high school degree alone, average income is going to be at least $350,000 more in your lifetime by having that degree, which more than pays essentially for the cost that one might have to borrow. But in addition, for a school like Stony Brook, that number is significantly higher. So the return on investment in attending a place like Stony Brook is really significant. And that had been lost, I think, in their messaging. The other thing they've been interested in doing, which is is concerning to people, is creating some type of rating systems for universities where they would say, okay, we're going to rate you based on your cost, based on your outcome, how many students graduate, the debt they have, and then we'll make a ranking, maybe like U.S. News, and we'll put a ranking together like that. Well, the problem is, of course, with that, is that institutions of higher education are so different across the country, right? You could name 3 institutions. The Berkeley School of Music is one institution. Alcorn State University is another. Stony Brook University, Princeton. These universities are really very different in terms of the kind of students that are applying and therefore the kind of outcomes that they're looking for. But to make one system essentially that would be designed to look at all of them really makes no sense. So I was there speaking about this, other people were speaking about it, really trying to convince the Department of Education and the Secretary that it would be very difficult to create a fair rating system in this way. They should really think more about setting some goals for schools, setting some outcomes they're looking for, but let individual schools kind of report what they're doing without creating a template that everybody's supposed to be following. I don't want to talk about this too long, but you can think of the inadvertent consequence. If you say, okay, now we're going to evaluate you and base your federal aid on your graduation percentage, right? How many students graduate? Well, Stony Brook can play in that arena. We would do okay in that. It wouldn't be a problem. Princeton would do fantastically well, right? Because 96% of their people are going to graduate. But take a school, let's say, and I'm going to pick on Alcorn State, but it's just because it's a name that was mentioned in some of the discussions. They're taking students who come from incredibly economically disadvantaged backgrounds, who may have not had the same kind of prep that other students do, and they're working really hard to help them succeed and graduate. But their graduation rate may be much lower, essentially, than a Stony Brook for that population. So the question then is, are you going to penalize them for that? Okay, so what would be their response? Their response would be, don't take so many of those students anymore. Take more students who maybe come from slightly higher economic backgrounds, who may have a higher chance of success. And that then would really destroy access, essentially, instead of enhancing it. So there's a lot of discussion here, but it was a very good discussion.
Sam, on that, Suffolk Community College is concerned by one of the governor's criterion for aid with the employment linkage. Any time that you get one size fits all, as you described, there are unintended consequences. Is that something that Stony Brook is?
So it's the same thing has been looked at in the president's ranking as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk about that. Would be looking at employment outcomes, and again, that's very complex because for some disciplines, for example, it may take years before you see the payoff. And in fact, with humanities disciplines, for example, often they catch up to some degree with STEM. But it takes 5 to 7 years often before they catch up with STEM. So to take a snapshot at any point of time is a problem. The other thing with graduation rates that's really a problem as they're currently calculated is that if someone from Stony Brook transfers to Cornell, right, that counts us as they didn't graduate from Stony Brook.
Yeah, that counts against
So that
you.
counts against us. They didn't graduate from Stony Brook. So which is crazy, but essentially that's how it works. So so there are problems with looking at employment. There are problems with looking at graduation rates. And again, one size fits all does not work. And I think you have to be careful about what you look at.
As an English major, the thing about employment that troubles me, and it's understandable now with costs, but to say that you're learning to earn, not
It puts a
learning for the
value
sake of-
judgment, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, you know, so for every Jim Simons who's been spectacular as a graduate of MIT, for example, there's also people who are doing amazing, important things in social work, in all sorts of areas who aren't as high income, and yet does that mean that they're not adding value essentially to society? It's very important.
So was your message heard, and do you think that?
Yeah.
So I think the answer is not so much. I think the education department, my feeling was, listening to the secretary, is that the education department remains committed to some type of ranking program. So I think everybody in the university communities, there's been major letters that came out from ACE, from APLU, from AAU. These are all major organizations, public and private universities, saying we think this is a bad idea. I think at least being at the table to try and look at what they end up with. But I would, as I said before, I would prefer that they abandon this idea, but I didn't get the message that they're interested in abandoning it.
Short of that, they better have a lot of criteria.
A lot of criteria. And I think, but when we went there, institutions that attended the summit were asked to make a pledge of some kind and make a commitment. And it's something we thought a lot about at Stony Brook, and really, we do, as I said before, a very good job in a number of aspects of our graduation rates, and we're above the national average for our 6-year graduation rates, which is the standard. But one area that I haven't been as happy with is our 4-year graduation rates, so right? And there's a lot of reasons that could be, and some of it may represent, again, we have economically disadvantaged students who, something happens in the family, they have to take time out for a while, then come back again. There's reasons why, but I think we need to do a better job essentially at 4-year and remove any barriers on our part. So if there's things that we're not providing enough courses, we're not providing good enough advising. So talked a lot with the senior leadership team, and we've made a commitment essentially to increase our 4-year graduation rate, which is now at about 48% to 60%. So it's a huge jump. We're giving ourselves 4 to 5 years to get that done. You can see I'm wavering a little on the number there. But you know, it's going to be a major commitment. We're setting up a task force essentially to do that. It's going to take tremendous effort in a number of fronts. We've already been committing resources towards it. Some of the money that came in from SUNY 2020 has gone, of course, to hire faculty, which will help us in this in terms of providing classes and sections, but also some of the money has gone into improve advising. We'll be looking at software and new technology to help us advise better and more efficiently. So it's an ambitious goal, but we think it's something great for our students. We're working on a catchy name for the initiative. People have ideas, send me an email. But we're very excited about it. So I think that was a real highlight. I want to talk about a couple other things very quickly. I introduced David Conover. David was the former dean of Stony Brook School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences and was the former director of the Division of Ocean Sciences at the National Science Foundation, where he oversaw a $350 million annual budget in NSF. So David has returned. So I don't know if you know this. So the way the National Science Foundation works is they pluck outstanding people from your campus, they bring them to Washington to run these agencies for a while, and then they return them back again. So then they come back again, and it's a fantastic system for the government. And I think, but it's good for universities as well, because we know we have people who understand research, who understand academic communities in these positions of power. So David has completed his term, and he's returned to become our interim vice chancellor for research. So David, welcome back. And then,
it's a great pleasure to be back.
Glad to have you. So then the other thing is Ray Williams, who many of you know, who's did a great job as Dean of the School of Dental Medicine, voluntarily wanted to step down, going to return to faculty practice. And so Ken is going to institute a search for the dean. I think he's set up a search committee already.
I have.
Yep. And but Mary Trular, some of you may know, an outstanding faculty member who's actually a Stony Brook alum, has been named interim dean of the School of Medicine. And Mary's probably busy working today.
Dental medicine.
Dental medicine, right? School of Dental Medicine. So that's important. What else did I want to talk about? I just wanted to mention again, our faculty continue to get tremendous awards. You'll see Cindy Chang and Philippa Gill, two outstanding professors, both in our College of Engineering and Applied Sciences, have received National Science Foundation Career Awards. These again are very prestigious. and a great start essentially to their scientific career, and something we're very pleased about. And then this is pretty amazing. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Indianapolis Prize, but the Indianapolis Prize, which was started, I want to say, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, maybe 5, maybe not that much longer ago. But it has become the premier prize for conservation, particularly animal conservation in the world. And Eli Lilly, the drug company, the Lilly Foundation, funds the prize essentially, and they've set up a very distinguished committee. And amazingly, they initially had 36 nominees for the prize, and 6 finalists were identified for the prize. 3 of them are Stony Brook University faculty, 3 of the 6 finalists for the prize, which is amazing. Russell Mittermeier, Carl Safina, and Patricia Wright are the 3 finalists. And this is really an amazing prize. It's a $250,000 award, unrestricted award that goes to the winner. So, and tremendous amount of prestige associated with it as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. You know, there's a 50% chance, right? So it's very good odds for us. But 3 really deserving people, and I urge you to look at their bios here. And Pat Wright is going to be honored at the Stars of Stony Brook Gala. So on April 16th, we're having the Stars of Stony Brook Gala. It's our traditional annual fundraiser. It raises money for scholarships, but also to support research. And Pat and her research will be honored at the Stars of Stony Brook Gala. So I encourage you to mark your calendar and potentially attend. And
the 3 of them, were they working in unison on something together?
No, separate
3
projects,
individual
completely separate projects. Yeah, totally separate projects.
That's great.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably stop. When is our next meeting? Do you know when the next meeting of the council is scheduled for?
May.
May. Okay. So then I'll remind you of one other thing then, because there's 2 things in April. Children's Hospital groundbreaking will be held Friday, April 11th at 11 a.m. I would love to see you there. It's going to be incredibly exciting, and we'll want to see you there. And then
What time is that, Sam?
11 a.m. So April 11th at 11 a.m. And then the Middle States, some of you may get engaged with Middle States. So Middle States is coming. I think the exact time in which they will be here and the exact schedule is still being worked out. But we're looking through a window between March 30th and April 2nd. You remember, this is the all-encompassing accreditation for the university, and they will want to talk to members of the council to kind of understand a little more about the governance of Stony Brook University and how it works. And so, Kevin, I know you're going to get called on, and I don't know what other members will get called on. Okay? I think I'll stop there and take any questions.
I'm going to ask you not to stop there.
Yeah.
I think, Sam, particularly because we're here, it might be good if you gave some context to the article that was in Newsday about a week and a half ago concerning Stony Brook's not working with any of the 8 insurance companies that are part of the New York Exchange. The headline was very negative. I spoke quickly to Ruben Pasternak when I came in here, and he was more sanguine and positive. But I think if you give us some context.
Sure. So I'll speak first, and then I'll let Ruben chime in. So it's we were committed and have been committed from the beginning to working with an exchange. So I don't think there was ever any question in our mind that we would work with one of the exchanges. I think that's been a commitment from the beginning. The challenge is, it's like negotiating with insurance companies, which we do all the time, was to get rates, essentially, from the exchange that would allow us to deliver care and not take significant financial losses. And that's really the challenge that one faces. How do you set up a contract that's going to allow you to deliver care and yet not put us at risk for tremendous financial losses? We know, and SUNY knows, what can happen when you're involved in a situation where hospitals are not in that type of thing, where they haven't shown, where there's been difficulties in terms of payer mix and in terms of reimbursements and so on, and that can really put a hospital at risk. So it's really incumbent upon us to do this, and it's not at all uncommon for it to take time for these kind of contracts to be reached. reached. And, you know, there have been times, and I'm not going to mention individual ones, but independent of the health exchanges, when we've been on the brink with various coverage. And let me just talk about my time in St. Louis, although it applies to Stony Brook as well. I remember a couple of times we were in conflict with Blue Cross Blue Shield, who provided most of the coverage for our employees at Washington University. And so the hospital and the medical school were in conflict to the point where we were going to stop seeing patients who had that coverage. If the contract wasn't signed, we were in a position where those patients would no longer be seen at the hospital. So there's a tremendous brinksmanship about this. There's colliding. People will really take positions that may not be as reasonable as they should be, but it's all part of a negotiation process. But usually the goal is that you are going to reach an agreement. So I'll let Reuven update you on where this stands, but let me just say that we are committed. I think things will be completed very soon. That's my expectation. But you know, I think I agree with you, Jim, and I know we're on the record. I think the headline was misleading.
Yeah.
Because I think the headline, you took a snapshot of a thing that's in process. And so, I think if we had made a statement that said, we're not going to negotiate, we're not interested in having an exchange, then I think the headline, Stony Brook rejects exchanges, would have been a fair and unbiased one.
It made it sound like it was totally a separate event.
Exactly. But instead, we were in the process and still negotiating. We just had not reached agreement. So a better headline might have been, Stony Brook has yet to reach agreement, and that takes two to make fronts or anything.
So journalism to study why they do that.
Well, because it doesn't sell as many newspapers,
Exactly.
conflict. So let me let Reuven kind of update you on progress, and then we'll answer questions together.
So can I just say?
Yeah.
My understanding is that the exchange pays almost similar to Medicaid. So the question is, if you take Medicaid, so why? Does it take so long, the exchange?
Yeah, so I think there's some explanations, and I think to the extent you can talk about this, because we're not really, there's Susan, so our lawyer here is not. So, we have to be very careful. These type of things, you can't discuss rates, you're not supposed to discuss deals. These are all, there's antitrust reasons why you're not allowed to discuss these things in any more than a most general form. But go ahead, Ruben.
Okay, so if I get poked at my left side, I'm not supposed to stop talking.
Susan, why don't you move next to it?
Closer.
Do that more effectively. Okay.
Okay, so one, I want to reemphasize what Dr. Stanley has said, is that from the very start we were in negotiations. There was never a decision not to participate. It was essentially what is going to be a reasonable payment, and we knew that we were going to have to make some compromise as well as the companies. I would also add that if you looked when the exchange first opened up at the participation of hospitals in the region, almost no hospitals were initially participant. Every hospital in the system had some issue that they had to address. Again, it was a negotiation that they had to come to. As we have been undergoing this, I do want to add that as patients have approached us about needing services at Stony Brook, especially those who have unique needs, we have been working with them and telling them that we will work with you. We've done constant negotiations with their companies so that they don't drop through the cracks and become the victims of essentially a negotiation process, that they are getting their care, both those who have gotten their care in the past and those who need our unique services. And I'll cut to the chase on one aspect and then answer your question about Medicaid. We have essentially completed the negotiation process of one. I can't go into what the details are, but we feel we have reached agreement with one of the companies. It has been a long process, but I think one that's been constructive for both, and we anticipate that being completed within the next business day or two. I would ask that not be quoted outside the room, but just to demonstrate that this has been ongoing. We think that will then generate further agreements with others. Once you break through in the first, that gives you a template to go forward with others. To the issue of why we take Medicaid but then don't take Medicaid rates. We take Medicaid because we're a state hospital. It's a state program. We feel it's part of our mission. Medicaid payments do not come close to covering the cost of care for patients, even in the most aggressive cost management situation. But we do that because that's what we feel we have to do. In the case of private insurance companies that are taking payment to provide care, our feeling is that people are paying money into private insurance companies. These companies then have the ability or have the charge of providing the insurance coverage for those individuals. What we are arguing about is not getting additional money from the state, additional money from the patients. What we are doing is trying to get the most we can from those private insurance companies to return back to healthcare programs that we use to support people here. And we know that they can do substantially better than Medicaid, and in some cases better than Medicare. So this has been about getting what we believe is a fair amount back for the care for those individuals. I would also say that one of our concerns has been doing what's fair for the patient, that a number of patients in their plans have a major deductible that they haven't had before, and we want to be sure that they don't have issues coming up with that as they have with some of the hospitals that have signed. So finding something that protects patients in the process as well. And the last point is getting clarification on the network, because as the networks have rolled out, there has been confusion as to what physicians and what hospitals are in and out, and being sure that's set as well as we move forward. So I want to thank you all for your patience, but I want to be sure people know that we have not left patients in the lurch as we do this. We've been very careful to be sure that they get the care and that we feel agreement is imminent.
And that was really, I think, one of the good things about the article was it did,
Yeah.
if you read the article, really, as we said before, it was really a little different from the headline, because it did point out that the hospital had really worked very hard to accommodate patients who had special issues, which is what we would expect.
So I'm taking two things away from this, that these negotiations are not all that unusual, they're pretty commonplace. And secondly, and you didn't say this, but you're
Well,
close.
we're being webcast, so.
Yeah,
so-
you're close to, with one, and you expect there'll be others as well.
Yep. Good. Okay.
Any other questions for Sam? All right, Sam, thanks for an excellent President's report and all the good things you're doing. Going to move on with the agenda. We are going to hear from Ken Kachansky and Dr. Joel Saltz, and the new Department of Biomedical Informatics. And Ken, I will be brave enough to say I will need a definition of that because I'm not sure exactly what that is, and look forward to hearing that. And so I'll hand it over to you, Ken.
Thanks. How do we switch over? No, good. So thank you all. Slight agenda switch. Yesterday, Sam asked that I update the Stony Brook Council on some of the newer high technology and advances that we're making here at Stony Brook Medicine, and one of them is biomedical informatics. And so midway through my presentation, I'll introduce Joel to you, and he'll say just a few words about what is biomedical informatics and what can it do for both the science and the art of medicine. Stony Brook Medicine, this is Charles Darwin, he's not one of our faculty members, but is up there to illustrate that this medical center, that the health sciences complex is undergoing a change. And the change is embodied in some of the people. So Vince Yang, our new chair of medicine, trained at Hopkins, came from Emory. Dennis Choi, trained at Harvard, came from Washington University and Emory, chair of neurology. Lynn O'Bee, our new dean for research, trained at Duke, came from South Carolina. Yusef Hanan, our new cancer center director, trained at Duke, came from South Carolina. Lisa Ben Scott, the head of our new head of our Masters of Public Health program, trained at Hopkins, was a Stony Brook faculty member before she came and led our MPH program. Ramin Parsi, we stole him from Columbia, our new chair of psychiatry. Todd Griffin, our new chair of obstetrics and gynecology, he is a Stony Brook alumni. I often tease Todd, he did everything at Stony Brook. Was he born at Stony Brook Hospital? Basil Regas, our new dean for clinical affairs. Brown and Yale, and came from Brown, Yale, one other place. Dean at, but came from Stony Brook, was head of GI. Our new dean for faculty affairs, Meenakshi Singh, University of Colorado, was on faculty here in the Department of Pathology. Reuven Pasternak, you just heard from Reuven, trained at Hopkins for most of his career. We stole him from Fairfax Hospital in Northern Virginia. Jim Taylor, was in practice at St. Francis Hospital, probably the foremost cardiac surgeon on Long Island, and his partner Harold Fernandez, also stolen from St. Francis Hospital, and are now our directors of our Heart Institute. Carol Gomes, also born in Stony Brook Hospital, alumnus of Stony Brook, multiple programs, our COO. Mark Schweitzer, our new chair for radiology, is a Long Islander, was at NYU, we stole him from the Ottawa Hospital. Joel Saltz, and I'll tell you about Joel in a moment. Mark Talamini, our new chair of surgery, just arrived. He trained at Hopkins virtually his entire career and was chair of surgery at UC San Diego. Joe Laver, we stole him from St. Jude's. He's our new chief medical officer. Jim Murray, we stole him from UC Irvine, our new chief information officer for all of the health sciences, the hospital and the practices. Sam Ryu is about to arrive as our new chair of radiation oncology from Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. Marianne Donahue, she's going to be our new chief nursing officer. She's right across the river in New Jersey, and hopefully she will arrive in the next few months once the George Washington Bridge opens again. TJ Gann, about to be our new chair of anesthesiology. So Joel Saltz is the founding chair of a new department of biomedical informatics. And Joel trained at Duke and Hopkins. He's an MD, PhD. He's a pathologist by training and a PhD in computer sciences. And he was on faculty at Maryland and Hopkins, and then he started chair departments of biomedical informatics at Ohio State, and then again at Emory, and now at Stony Brook. Joel, would you say a few words about what is biomedical informatics and how is it going to impact the clinical practice here and the research going on here?
Okay, Ken, thanks, and delighted to be here. So people ask the question, what is biomedical informatics? It's a relatively new field which involves the application of information technology, computerization, to all facets of medicine. And Stony Brook is an incredibly exciting place in the sense that we have a really, I think, unique opportunity to integrate our very strong, exceptional applied math, computer science, physics programs, along with our remarkably forward-thinking and fast-moving medical center. So let me give a few sort of examples of how biomedical informatics does and will impact the healthcare system. So as everybody here knows, the United States is spending on the order of something like $2.5 trillion in healthcare. And our healthcare statistics are, maybe above average for all countries, but certainly I think few people think that we're really getting our money's worth. And one of the things that the rest of the economy has been doing, all you have to do is to get onto Google, go to buy something at Amazon, find marketers who will target your particular internet profile and say, gee, we know you pretty well, we think you ought to be buying something. You go to Target, you'll actually often find what you're looking for, and it's not a coincidence. The Target folks track who's shopping there, they work out people's preferences, they impute other things. Bottom line is we can do remarkably better than what we do now in terms of both understanding and anticipating our state and country's healthcare needs for each patient, being proactive, not dealing with the situation where, go home, if you feel better, that's good. If not, give us a call and make another appointment. That healthcare can catch up and actually surpass the rest of the economy in terms of the ability to proactively care for our patients. And I think there's a huge opportunity. We can do it much higher quality, much more proactively to make things falling through the cracks be, extremely uncommon. But then there's the other aspect involving genetics, genomics, the whole issue of taking the scientific advances that have been occurring at our institution and all the institutions that Ken has talked about in terms of the recruits and many others, and turning that into clinical practice. So for instance, when drugs are prescribed, when medications are prescribed, increasingly there's actually information that we can find out how's a person going to react to this drug. And more is being learned in terms of just doing genetic tests, not the sort of genetic tests that are gonna tell you, personal things about people, but just genetic tests that say, how is a person gonna react to this drug? Is it gonna work well for them? And there's been a tremendous explosion in knowledge about that. There's also been a tremendous explosion and huge potential in targeted cancer therapy and targeted therapies for other diseases, where again, you look at genetics and genomics, you look at sort of basic biology and translate it to medicine. And that's what biomedical informatics is about. So it's about both making healthcare run better, and it's also about translating basic biology and using that information to care for patients.
Joel, is it more of an internal support for the rest of the university, or will students be able to get undergraduate or graduate degrees in biomedical?
Great. Well, thanks for asking that question. So the answer is both. Okay, so we have a new department. We're recruiting 9 faculty, 7 tenure track, 2 advanced technology folks who will be experts in working with Jim Murray and the rest of the organization to deploy this work. We also are working with Chuck Tabor and Ken Iñaco on a letter of intent, which we're expecting will become a PhD, master's, and certificate program with biomedical informatics. So we're hoping soon to have a absolutely top PhD, master's, and certificate program. So this will train both researchers, but it will also, in terms of actually doing the things we're talking about, reducing it to practice, we need large numbers of people who are much more sophisticated. So there's a huge workforce aspect, which I think is important to talk about here, because obviously employment is key. And there's a real mismatch between the sorts of people who we're training in information technologies and what are needed in healthcare systems. So for instance, at Stony Brook, we have a few hundred people who work in IT, and they're excellent people, but most of their training has been on the job because there have been so few programs that will teach people about the really critical nuances of biomedical informatics, not just about computers in general, but about patients and clinical environments. So we're going to be training people ranging from folks who will work in IT groups throughout the state, throughout the country, as well as people who will be working in academics, as well as people who will be working to produce better vendor products. So training and education for both practical work and for research are absolutely central part of our effort. Certainly another central part is to become one of the top 3 institutions in biomedical informatics from a research point of view. And my informal target, we're in the process of strategic planning, but the public forum is my goal is to do this within 7 years. Again, a critical aspect is the use of Stony Brook, leveraging Stony Brook as a living laboratory for making these things real. And that's the exciting thing about what we're putting together here, is marrying the absolutely first-rate quantitative sciences from West Campus with our health system, which provides a substrate for actually doing these things.
Is there a commercial application for it too? The insurance companies, in terms of, again, managing costs and...
Many commercial applications, and that's another thing. I'm glad actually, if we'd talked beforehand, that I'd ask some questions. I don't think I can give you better questions, because this was another thing that attracted me to Stony Brook, in the sense that healthcare informatics, biomedical informatics is almost a perfect storm when it comes to spin-offs. And so the strong support for new business creation here is, I think, a critical aspect of this, because whether you're talking insurance companies, whether you're talking electronic healthcare, whether you're talking imaging, whether you're talking folks on the payer side, there are hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue businesses, and this is growing up very quickly in the sort of health technology area. And this is certainly something that we need to be capturing in New York.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a good segue into the Startup New York update.
Sounds like it's a great
But Joel, thank you. Ken, anything else?
Oh, yes, lots more.
Could I just ask a question of Dr. Zolsky? He's being whispered to.
Joel?
Oh.
I just have a question for you, Doctor, just before you go. I'm so glad you're humanizing this kind of technician that all hospitals are being introduced with the tool IT, and the doctors are, a little bit sour on that. But may I just say also, with CMS regulations now where they sort of say, did you relate the side effects to your patients when you're checking out? And a lot of our doctors are not complying with these kind of regulations because they say, well, it's ordinary. And CMS does not then reestablish some of the funds that they're holding back in Medicare and Medicaid systems. So this is going to at least help that group of folks who are, they'll find out what they're allergic to and everything else when they check out of the hospitals, when this is entrenched in the communities especially.
Oh,
I think this is an amazing program, and I think it's going to help medical, or wherever it is, all of this technology and training that you're going to be giving and generating from Stony Brook. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, and certainly having a very strong positive impact on our own efforts at Stony Brook.
Yes.
And for our collaborators, clinical collaborators, is absolutely a central thing here. And certainly, one of the big problems with electronic health records as they now are is they're essentially electronic versions of paper records.
Yeah.
And nobody just, if a clinician went through everything in a single patient's record, they'd see 2 patients a day. So it is critical to develop, which is what we're doing and what our field is doing, electronic methods of summarizing and giving information to clinicians and to patients that really crystallize and encapsulate what's going on.
Congratulations. I think it's on a way to a perfect success
Thank you.
for the whole healthcare systems. Yeah.
I have a question. And I remember reading about when we first, a couple of years ago, there was a big push to make these records electronic. The government was looking for some standardization. Is that, I know software involved and there were private businesses bidding on it, but is there a standard format for electronic?
That's a huge problem. There are a multitude of companies that don't talk to each other, and you have to put patches together to get one company's software to talk to another company's software. And Joel and Jim are charged with putting together a way to have hospitals communicate with other emergency rooms, with other practices. That's part of the network that Reuven is trying to put together with hospitals, and Basil Regas is trying to put together with physicians. So it's a huge problem.
So it was an objective that was not obtained.
Not even close.
A quick Stony Brook story. I met a fella who's in the Advanced Technology Center that's working with school districts. They have the same problem collecting data. He's from Computer Associates, designed a software package that connects all the softwares together. So we have another opportunity.
Business opportunity.
Mike Despina, yeah,
Another
smart
one.
guy.
So Sam also asked that I go through, biomedical informatics is one of many technological innovations that we're trying to bring together to the medical school. 3.5 years ago when I got here, this is what our average laboratory looked like, and they clean up well. And so by renovation, modernization, recruitment of new faculty members, we've been able to increase biomedical research funding here at Stony Brook Medicine by 25%. We've remodeled 22,000 square feet of space. Our goal is 90,000 square feet of space. We're upgrading our high technology facilities. We're building new buildings. For example, this BSL-3 facility here is going to be constructed right over there, a high-level containment facility, biological safety laboratory. That's what BSL stands for. And it's going to be a way for us to move our microbiology research forward. An F-18 tracer lab. That's the high technology, the cyclotron and PET imaging for imaging the brain and other parts of the body. So we're upgrading, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Image is everything, as they say. And let me just illustrate one of the ways that high-tech medicine is improving people's health and improving the cost of health care. So this is what a coronary artery looks like. And when you come to the emergency room, Stony Brook University Hospital emergency room with chest pain, we don't often know how to treat you because EKGs aren't definitive And histories and physicals aren't definitive, and sometimes blood tests aren't definitive. So is there a new tech way to evaluate whether your chest pain is because you have a blockage in your coronary artery, or whether you ate something bad for dinner, or maybe your esophagus is irritated, or maybe the lining of your heart is irritated? So this is what I hope everybody's coronary artery looks like. This is a CT scan of the chest that one of our faculty members, Michael Poon, does. This is what I hope your coronary artery does not look like. This is a lesioned, a diseased coronary artery, and this is the stuff of myocardial infarctions, of heart attacks. Michael did a study where he took 1,800 patients coming into the Stony Brook University Hospital emergency room and randomized them. 900 received standard care, and 900 got an immediate coronary CT angiogram. And then he looked at the outcomes. 358 of these 900 patients got admitted to the hospital to try to figure out what was wrong with them. When he did the immediate coronary angiogram, only 123 patients got admitted. 230 patients were saved from being admitted to the hospital. They did not have coronary artery disease, and they came back. They had their esophagus problems worked out, or they had whatever chest wall worked out. So a way to take research and apply it to clinical care. This is the next wave. This is the simultaneous PET CT scanner, Mark Schweitzer's baby, as he thinks of it. This is a device that was installed down at the Cancer Center a few months ago, and this is the next wave of high technology medicine that a place like Stony Brook Medicine is moving forward. It's one of the first clinical sites in the United States, certainly the first on Long Island, the third in New York State, and 10th in North America. Because of the generosity of Lisa and Robert Laurie, we created the imaging suite in the Cancer Center. We had the ribbon cutting in October, and now it is fully functioning as a first way to look simultaneously at both the function with PET and the structure with MRI of the heart, of the brain, of the lungs, of virtually anywhere in the body. This scanner can do. We have a bunch of onlys here at Stony Brook Medicine, and I'm going to talk to you about transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and then I'm going to give you a taste of what the future looks like. So let me start this movie. This is a way to replace your aortic valve. When your aortic valve, the valve that leads blood out of your heart, is diseased or damaged, this is the way new technology can fix it.
TAVR stands for transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and it's a technique whereby a balloon expandable valve can be delivered in a percutaneous fashion through the groin or through the apex of the heart, and delivered in a way that replaces the aortic valve without having full open heart surgery.
Aortic valve replacement in general is a very, very common procedure in the US. However, there is a very large population size that still does not qualify for surgery because of prohibitive risk. And that's the population that we target for this transcatheter procedure. And we feel that doing it with catheter, the minimal invasive approach, the risk would be smaller. And so that would be the preferable therapy in those patients.
The number one benefit is avoiding open heart surgery and the chest incision and the sternal incision that is required for that approach. It is generally a quicker operation, a shorter length of stay in the hospital, and a quicker recovery at home as well. Most patients will be in the hospital for 2 to 4 days after the procedure, and then go home, but they go home in good shape right away, rather than having to overcome the discomfort of a chest incision. Right away, they're functional.
This is a procedure that is done with a heart team. I think it's very important to include various specialties, which we have done. The specialties involved are heart surgery as well as interventional cardiology. But then we also have other experts that are specializing in echocardiography, which is imaging of the heart, vascular surgeons, radiologists. So it's really a large team because it's a complex procedure, so we need the expertise for multiple specialties.
So a lot of people in blue. Now, one last thing about these kind of programs, we're now beginning to get the word out, and you've seen some of our advertisements. No, those weren't really 35,000 extras, those were computer generated. This is one of my favorite ones. This is the PET MRI, the notion of how do we understand what strokes are made of and how do we intervene and treat them. And then this is the next ad for pediatric cardiology. We're making an impact on the impression of healthcare in Suffolk County and Long Island. Look at what on the left, what has happened with Stony Brook assessment. So this is a public survey, 1,000 telephone calls to Suffolk County citizens. The impression, the favorable impression of Stony Brook's going up, and we're taking it away from St. Francis. This is in cardiac disease. This is in neurosciences. Favorable impressions going up, everybody else going down. In cancer, we've actually now drawn close to Memorial Sloan Kettering in favorable ratings for cancer at Stony Brook Medicine. So finally, let me just go through sort of a sneak preview of what's going to be happening just a little bit to the south and west of us. So this is a bird's eye view. You see the two bed towers on the right. Those are black in real life today, but they are going to be bluish when we replace the entire exterior wall of Stony Brook University Hospital.
Wow.
And then there's two more buildings that aren't there right now. One is the bed tower. This is going to be the home of Stony Brook University Hospital, Children's Hospital, and the MART building, the Medicine and Research Translation building. So here is what it's going to look like. I don't have sound for this one yet.
We'll hum.
Oh, hum. Well, wait, reserve that judgment.
We'll hum.
She said
We'll
will.
hum.
Oh, will hum.
We'll hum
Thank you.
along.
So this is a virtual tour of what the complex will look like in about 2.5 years. You see the blue glass on the bed towers. So this is driving north on a new road. Right now there's a big pile of sawdust right there. There'll be 3 separate entrances to this building. There'll be an entrance to Children's Hospital, there'll be an entrance to the auditorium, and to the MART building. And you'll see those in a second. So this is the lobby of Children's Hospital. Nice colors. Everything is soft, indestructible. It has the requisite fish tank in the lobby. This is what a patient room will look like. A lot more cheery with seating and bed capacity for 2 parents. The MART building. The Cancer Center will be housed in the new MART building. This is the lobby to the MART building. The elevators to the upper floors are straight back. You'll see the auditorium in a moment. And then the Cancer Center is immediately through those glass doors to the left. Cancer chemotherapy is a big part of what goes on in a cancer center, and the infusion center is an important part of that. This is the auditorium. This is going to be a 305-seat state-of-the-art auditorium. It's going to have a breakout space right here, a lobby where we can hold functions and the like. We're going to be able to hold seminars here, classrooms, nighttime entertainment, a number of opportunities. And then we need to connect the two, the old hospital and the new hospital. This is a corridor, the cafeteria is on the left. We're walking west. Then there'll be a new gift shop over here on the left. And then ultimately there'll be a circular staircase at the end that goes down to new educational space. 12 new classrooms, breakout rooms, procedure units. So we're very excited about these new buildings. Groundbreaking for the Mart building occurred in November. You heard Sam say groundbreaking for Children's Hospital in April. And so this is the face of Stony Brook Medicine for the years to come.
Wow.
So that's my story. Welcome everybody to the health sciences here. I figured someone needed to look like a doctor, so you are. Just to convince you that there are real doctors here and not just suits. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I know we're running a little short on time.
Well, thanks, Ken, and I had the honor of coming to an event that Ken had last week at the Health Science Center, where I saw some of this and other things. And what I shared with him and with Sam is that, one, it's just the story continues to be amazing. The Simons effect is right there in terms of the gift for the Mart, which will obviously connect to the Children's Hospital and the rest of the campus. But also with the SUNY 2020 that we all supported, and Sam and I actually went to Albany to get the governor to and the legislature to approve, which allowed for the rational tuition plan, which then allowed for the hiring and the attraction of talent here. And you can see it firsthand in all of the talent that Ken and Sam have been able to attract to this university. And so Ken, in a very short period of time, very amazing job, and we commend you and congratulate you and your whole team as well.
It's just beautiful, really stunning.
It's breathtaking. And think of all the jobs too. I mean, this is economic
job
engine.
Tremendous number
Again,
of
this
construction
is
jobs.
the place
And
on
then
Long
new
Island.
jobs created for research as well.
Absolutely.
So,
For
yeah, I mean,
everywhere, along the line.
I'll just emphasize what Kevin said. I mean, I think it's extraordinary progress, and but it came from, as he said, from philanthropy, but also from state support. So again, SUNY 2020 and money from the governor was put in SUNY 2020 for capital, and then from our state legislators made a big difference. And Senator LaValle, Senator Flanagan helped repurpose some dollars we needed to help make this possible. And then the hospital. People talk about the importance of the hospital essentially for SUNY. Well, the hospital is a big part of helping with this construction. And one of the great things is because we manage Stony Brook University Hospital, we could do the Mart and the bed tower as one project, essentially. Since it's all integrated under Stony Brook University, that could be one project, which saves us tens of millions of dollars, essentially, going forward. So a lot of exciting stuff on both sides of the street, and thank you for all you're doing to help support it. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sam. Anybody else have any questions for Ken? Good. Ken, thank you. Joel, welcome, and thank you. Good luck with your new program. We're going to move on with the agenda. We're going to get an update on Startup New York from Matt Whalen and Elaine Crossan.
Okay, thank you. I am going to move very quickly through this as we give you a brief overview of where we are in Startup New York. Startup New York, is most of you will recall, is the governor's economic development plan to bring new jobs, new ecosystems of innovation to New York. It's important to realize that the connection to the jobs is directly connected to the university systems and how we can create innovation ecosystems. So as we move through, the governor's plan calls for Startup New York to take advantage of vacant land and space and buildings on SUNY and CUNY campuses around the state. We've identified space and land in the R&D park on the main campus, Southampton campus, and Calverton. Very important. We cannot create space by moving existing academic programs, student service programs, etc. So we've got to make sure that we remain core, we remain true to our mission of educating students. So this is not about creating new space by moving existing people. That being said, in the normal movement of people around campus, if space comes up that's suitable for Startup New York, we do want to be able to take advantage of that. We also have our incubator space that is affiliated with Stony Brook, the vacant space at Calverton, our space in Leidy, CWIT, Center for Excellence in Wireless Information Technology and Advanced Energy. Companies that graduate from this space are eligible for the tax-free benefits under Startup New York, even if they're not a new business. That's important because Leidy, which is currently full, has the potential to graduate some people who could go on and expand their companies and take advantage of some of the benefits. The legislation calls for us to develop a plan. We've got to identify land and space. We've got to describe the types of businesses that we'll target. We've got to demonstrate that the businesses are aligned with the academic mission of our university, and also describe the positive community and economic development. Here's where we are. We have circulated a preliminary plan to our stakeholders, that's municipalities, union leaders, faculty, and university senate leaders. So what you're going to see has actually been in circulation, and Kevin, the council received some of this information as well. So our plan calls for us to use space at the Stony Brook University R&D Park, up to 200 acres of once we remain true to the covenants and look at the set-asides. We would like to use space at the R&D Park. We'd like to use space in the New York State Center for CWIT, Center for Excellence in Wireless and Information Technology, AirTech, the Advanced Energy Research Center, and a Research and Support Services building. We also have space available at Calverton, and we also have space available at Southampton, and we're requesting as space becomes available in Long Island High Technology Incubator to use that space. What we did was we put together a fairly broad plan that will allow us to use space as and if it becomes available through the normal processes of people moving around on campus. The reason we did that is, in order to request approval, we've got to go through a 30-day notification to stakeholders, and then we've got 60 days to submit to SUNY RF for approval through the Startup New York process. What we wanted to do was be able to say we have space available as and when it becomes available, it may be eligible for Startup New York. So we are in this process right now. So we provided a copy of the plan to our university senate, the campus union leaders, student government, both the graduate and undergraduate. We provided it to leaders in Smithtown, in Brookhaven, in Riverhead, and in Southampton. We provided it to the local university council so that we can receive comments back on our plan. As a matter of fact, we received some preliminary comments back from SUNY very late Friday evening. And the plan was very, very well received by them. They've given us some new templates to work with. I think one of the things that is important here is this is an evolving plan. The state is working to evolve this plan, and so we are now on, I think, our third set of templates to submit to the plan. And we're adjusting those as we go along. Empire State Development Corporation, in consultation with the Chancellor, will approve or disapprove the plan. We have some early indication that, again, SUNY is very, very happy with what we've submitted. Eligible businesses have to be aligned or further the academic mission of the university. It must create net new jobs, positive economic and community benefits. This includes companies relocating from out of state to New York State, or New York State companies that will expand. Campuses in Long Island, Westchester, and New York businesses must be a startup or a high-tech company. High-tech is actually defined as engaged in design and development and introduction of new biotech, information tech, remanufacturing, advanced materials, et cetera, et cetera. So we are working within fairly tightly wound definitions with some of this. These are the areas that we are looking to include: biotechnology, wireless information technology, advanced materials, smart grid. Each of these things, as you review this list, and I am going quickly, you'll see we have expertise already in CWIT, or in LIDE, or in the Advanced Energy Research Center, or among our faculty on campus. So we're trying to play clearly to our strengths in this process. There are some expressed exclusions in the governor's plan. Retail, wholesale, restaurants, real estate brokers, accounting firms, financial services. So the plan is designed really to create these innovation ecosystems that bring not only new jobs and new companies, but new innovations, new technology innovations that will allow for lifestyle improvements, for healthcare improvements, whatever it might be.
Are those exclusions statewide?
Those exclusions are statewide, correct, Lynn?
Yes.
The benefits include 100% tax-free, no income tax for employees, no sales, property, or business taxes while partnering with the university. Employees will pay no income taxes on the wages for the first state income taxes. Thank you. That we are not immune from the federal government. And then there are certain covenants about the company must adhere to the creation of a certain number of net new jobs each year. average number, there is a provision in the legislation that the number of net new jobs cannot exceed 10,000 new jobs statewide each year, but any excess from one year may roll into the future year. So they've been, again, fairly liberal in how this is done. The community benefits, we've got to create some community benefits here. And so our goal is to create long-term relationships. These are not startup real estate deals. We want to create long-term relationships for our students, for our faculty, for the companies and the employees. Ultimately, we'll create through this plan new jobs, new customers for local businesses, new home purchases, new teaching and research opportunities for undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, researchers, really to create these innovation ecosystems. We've traveled to Maryland to look at their University of Maryland Life Science Research Park. We've been down to North Carolina, and it's really important that we not just do this as a land deal, but that we actually create the ecosystem that will keep the university, the faculty, the researchers, and the students moving. We have to develop a plan for the type of businesses that we have to attract. There's guidance, we're getting new guidance on this all the time. Businesses will apply to the universities. In our early read from SUNY, we've been specifically mentioned as having the best plan for vetting the businesses that we will accept into this company. Once we accept a company and say, okay, you meet our academic mission, we have the space where we can support you, we have the faculty, the research, the students that you can support, we have to have that approved by Empire State Development Corporation. The law is written fairly broadly. It's written so that if they don't get back to us in 60 days, it's approved. And so I've heard it said it's the first time legislation has been written like that.
The way government works, they'll all be approved.
So, well, I was going to send it in an envelope that says do not open for 60 days.
Exactly, right?
We have great oversight from an executive committee down through a working group. You can see that the senior leadership of the university is all involved in this. We are going to ensure alignment with the university mission, the academic mission. We have a fairly tightly designed business recruitment process. We'll be doing information sessions. We'll look at preliminary submissions so that we can work with the company as they go through our process. If we find a company we feel might be better suited for another university someplace, we will make that recommendation. And there may be opportunities to work collaboratively with Farmingdale or other places. Certainly, looking at Long Island for us would be first and foremost. But if there's other areas we can work with, we will do that as well. We'll do an initial review, we'll have panel interviews, and finally a report will be reviewed by the Stony Brook Executive Committee for final approval. The Executive Committee, again, we may choose to refer a company to another campus for consideration. We have to look for our evaluation criteria. We've got to look at the financial soundness and growth potential, the demonstration of business concepts, description of business activities, and clearly the demonstration of positive economic and community benefits. This has got to benefit the community. New homes, new jobs, new local customers. That will be very important. It's also very important to realize that we won't be bringing in companies that have a similar business in a I believe it says a local contiguous census zone. So we won't be bringing people in under a tax-free umbrella to compete with people who are not in that existing tax-free base. So it's important to realize we won't be creating unfair competition levels. We have a working group that is comprised of faculty from across the university. The University Senate is represented on that, as are certain other areas across campus. These are some of the key people involved in economic development across campus, and certainly we have been working together with Yakov Shamash and Anne-Marie Scheidt through economic development on this project, but it is a university-wide effort that we want to make sure we have as much collaboration as possible. Again, I jumped ahead a little bit, but we will be protecting existing businesses. And there is oversight and accountability. The legislation is fairly tightly written. That conflict of interest guidelines, we've had to submit in our plan 4 different conflict of interest guideline procedures. We have to, watch self-healing, and companies that fail to live up to their promise of creating new jobs will be removed from the program. This is not Stony Brook rules. These are all written into the legislation as it is designed. It's a huge opportunity, I think, for the university. It's a huge opportunity for the local region, and I'm very excited. Our local stakeholder comment period closes at 5 p.m. this evening. In the next 2 days or 3 days, we'll be submitting our plan, which starts the 60-day review process.
Very impressive on that. If we have any leads for companies, should we refer them to you?
You can refer them to me, and we'll get them into, we're working with a spreadsheet right now. We have about 50 interested companies between people who have reached out to Yakov Shamash, Emery Scheit for economic development, people who have come to us centrally. We're going to be meeting and putting those all onto a spreadsheet for review.
Any of them from outside of New York?
Several.
The state of New York is advertising all over the country, Start New York. You watch TV, you'll see Start New York TV commercials in California, wherever.
Good. We can steal some more and do a good job at that.
3 quick questions. The time to get in the plan, not just for Stony Brook, but is there a deadline for the plan to get it into the state?
The program is open for 10 years, so my understanding is it's 10 years from when it was introduced in July, and you can apply within that 10-year window for a 10-year window. So you could apply effectively up till 2020.
Yeah.
2020.
They said this is not a race, so there's no deadline for submitting applications. It's not a race.
Second question, it sounds like Stony Brook has enough available land so that you can use the program. You're not looking for any more, right?
We are not currently looking to access, to take on new land for this program. If someone would like to give us some land, I'm sure Dexter would be interested.
But I think that raises a good point, which is the challenge that we face is space. It's not land, it's building space. So in other words, there are other campuses that have underutilized space. So they have buildings where they would be able to immediately bring someone in because they're not using it. Essentially, they weren't able to fill it. That's not our problem at Stony Brook. And in fact, all of our space is, I wouldn't say it's absolutely 100% optimally used. That would be an exaggeration. But it's generally used, I think, pretty well. So one of the things that we're struggling with in this process is our ability, and this is why this mezzanine building that Kevin mentioned was important to the Regional Economic Development Council, is we're going to need to build new space, essentially, if we're going to attract larger companies and decant our incubator and have opportunities in the R&D park or any place else. We have to build buildings. And I think one of the challenges we're facing is how to build those buildings. We would like to enter into some public-private partnerships to do that because we think that would be a more efficient way in many cases. We can build faster, helps the economy, of course, by getting public-private partnerships involved. But the challenge has been going through this legislation and figuring out exactly what kind of flexibility we have, because there's complexities about the kind of leases that can be negotiated. There's complexities about who would retain ownerships of buildings that are done in this. Is it owned by the private developer? Is it owned by the state? Who retains title? There's issues around usage. So in other words, as a tax-free and as a state entity, when we build a building, we can't turn it over for completely to private use, right? There are IRS reasons. The IRS would say, okay, now you're providing, Pfizer, I'm just picking them out of a hat, with tax-free space essentially, and that, potentially, if you're supporting this business in some way, are you now in some sense violating your tax-free position?
Maybe you could do it through a long-term land lease.
Well, I think there's lots of, we're trying to figure out what's going to be allowed essentially under this. And that, I think, has been an area that hasn't been so clear in the regulations, is what would be available and not available. So I think that's a challenge, and that's where we may, need help from you all, because there may be political components of this to think about. How do we make this so it works? I mean, everybody knows what it is we want to do here. We want to bring companies to New York, right? That's what we're trying to do. And Stony Brook wants to play a big part in it. But our ability to do this may be handicapped somewhat by what we're allowed to do in terms of partnerships and building spaces. And so that, to me, is what I see as the biggest challenge. I think we're an extraordinarily desirable place to relocate in this type of tax-free situation. It's a great place to be. We're close to New York City, which has reduced ability to participate in this. So I think we have great advantages, but if we can't kind of work, and the state is not willing to kind of work with us to help us establish and facilitate these kind of partnerships, it would be difficult for us, I think, to reach the full potential of this program. So.
My third question is easy. Can we have a copy of that? Yeah.
Yeah, presentation, sure.
For the applications you're going to be reviewing, what are the specific student benefits you're going to be looking for from these businesses?
Internships, real life co-op experiences, internship to career experiences. So, the ability for students to get in with a company on the ground floor and work as an intern, potentially intern experiential learning to full-time job could be quite good. And we all know that our goal here is to make sure students get a great education, great work experiences leading to rewarding careers.
I have two little questions. I noticed in the list of allowable companies or desired companies to qualify for this, one was film post-production, which kind of was like a little outlier because all the others are so high-tech, innovative kind of stuff. And I was wondering what kind of, and the related question to that is that we have space in the Southampton campus, because I'm always looking, of course, from East End, at Atlantic Hall, which is an unused building there. And how big is that building? Square foot, is that going to be?
About 12,000 square feet between the first floor and the lower level. The lower level is unfinished. It's 11 to 12,000 square feet, but it's roughly, say, 5,500 each level.
But that's a good space. That's a lot of good space.
And it's important to realize that the post-production film effort these days is all high-tech. So laying in sound, laying in special effects, all of that happens on computers. You can make a movie with a Mac on your desktop.
Wow. I know.
You actually did. You did a nice
Facebook just made a movie out of my stuff, my pictures. That's really weird. But so no, I was just wondering because the East End again, it's a little further traveling, and the location is not prime out there in Southampton, even though it's a good location. But it is close to the East End, and the movie business. So I was just kind of thinking all that stuff. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from Matt? Nope. Great, Matt. Thank you. Next up, we're going to hear from.
So let me.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, sorry, Mr. Chair. To interrupt. But I was going to suggest, Matt. We want to give a good update on Southampton. There's a lot of exciting things happening out there in terms of planning. I'm wondering if maybe because the external relations update is based on legislative priorities and that budget is going to come up, and maybe we switch those and we see how long it takes Elaine to go through that, and maybe we save the Southampton update, which I think is less time sensitive, for our next meeting. Is that okay with you, Mr. Chair, and everybody else? Okay.
Oh, absolutely, Mr. President. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Good morning. I'm going to give an overview of the executive budget summary that was announced in mid-January. The governor unveiled his executive budget proposal. And I'll start with the operating budget, which is essentially flat year-to-year support for the state-operated campuses. Now, I say essentially flat because the budget as proposed does not include monies for the collectively bargained increases for SUNY employees and members of the UUP. It is estimated that will cost the system $82 million. I believe that's a two-year figure, the $82 million. And the SBU figure is an annual figure of $9 million a year. So discussions are already underway in the legislature about how we are going to fund those collectively bargained pay raises.
So traditionally, that has been put in general, that has been put into the state allocation. So they increase the state allocation that we receive by that cost, which was very good for us. We don't actually negotiate that. It's done by the governor's office on employee relations, not us, that contract. But traditionally, as I said, it's been folded into the state allocation. So if it becomes a cost for us, then we have to find $9 million basically out of our budget. And I think the concern we have is the obvious thing will be from the increase in tuition revenue we have, but then that will counter essentially the effect that SUNY 2020 is designed to have. And the chancellor said that. The chancellor recently, in testimony she gave to the legislature, said very specifically, and she said in another speech again yesterday, that she's very concerned about the impact essentially on SUNY 2020 and the growth plan that would come from this particular effect and others.
Jim, is that the same what's done with the community college? Does the county executives, labor relations folks, do they negotiate with their unions, or do you guys negotiate directly?
We do now after Plan C, after we
Oh,
read it.
before that, it used to be the county?
Yes.
So now you do it on your own?
Yeah. Right.
But here at the state does it.
We're not involved at all.
Got
So
it.
we can make some suggestions essentially on things we think are important to the thing, but we do not do any of the negotiations. It is
Got it.
done for the whole system basically by the governor's office of employee relations.
Got it, thanks.
And you may recall that under SUNY 2020, there was a maintenance of effort provision, which essentially, was a pledge by the executive and the legislature that they would not reduce the operating support for SUNY from the baseline of the year SUNY 2020 was enacted. And there are those questioning whether or not the failure to include the funding for these increases violates that provision. The division of the budget has said that they're not, they have kept faithful to the maintenance of effort provision because that this is an increase, and that they're only obligated to pledge the base funding from the prior year. The other item that's not included in the executive budget operating section is the items that were added by the legislature last year, which totaled about $2.2 million system-wide. You'll see that one of the items is $333,000 for the Marine Animal Lab here at SBU. We are already in discussions with Senator Laval's office. He added that money last year for us. We're in discussions with his office in terms of getting it added again this year. It's not unusual for the governor's executive budget proposal not to include the items that were added by the legislature. Also, speaking of SUNY 2020, the operating budget does set appropriation levels sufficient to support the tuition increases, so we will have the authority to spend those tuition increases. And there is a new round of SUNY 2020 announced in the budget. There's $55 million to launch this new round, and the winner will highlight, or winners, I guess, will highlight the use of technology to improve student academic success, leverage partnerships through the Startup New York program, focus on experience-based learning that connects our students to the workforce, and the plans must be developed in consultation with the Regional Economic Development Council, and that's something new this year. So we have already started to have discussions internally about our plan, and we think we're very well positioned to put in a winning plan under round 4. The operating budget also includes $8 million for full tuition scholarships to be offered to the top 10% of New York State high school graduates who choose to come to a SUNY school and pursue a career in the STEM fields. And the students in return must commit to work in New York State for 5 years. I think this is also a program that will benefit Stony Brook, given our expertise in STEM. Turning to the hospital, as many of you know, each year we receive some direct state support for our hospital. It usually totals about $90 million by the time the budget is enacted. This year, the governor's budget includes $69 million for all the 3 SUNY hospitals. That's an increase of $9 million over his executive budget proposal last year, but it does not reflect the money that was added by the legislature last year. So we will be going back to the legislature to see if they will add money back in to bring us up to at least $90 million. With respect to the Long Island State Veterans Home, there was an increase in its appropriation authority of about $800,000. That's our money, it's just the authority to spend it that's been increased.
Elaine, are you doing these requests for the additions to the legislature through the 21 and 30-day amendment process with the governor, or through separate
So the
legislation through the negotiation of the budget?
It's through the negotiation of the budget. We have one ask in through the 30-day amendment period, which I'll get to. But with respect to the hospital money in particular, that's usually a legislative add-on. This is the Centers of Excellence and the Centers of Advanced Technology. There's been a slight decrease in the funding for the Centers of Excellence. That's mostly because they've added a few, but they didn't increase the funding pot. So we'll be up in Albany again, going to the legislature asking for the $872,000. And the funding for the CATS was flat year to year. What the operating budget does not address, it does not address the continuing fiscal crisis at downstate or the status of the Long Island College Hospital. That continues to be a financial drain on the SUNY system, and you know, every day there are new events that we read about in the paper. There are no changes to TAP. And now we're going to turn to the capital portion of the budget. As you may recall, last year's executive budget included no money for critical maintenance system-wide. That was not a popular decision, and the legislature and the governor's office heard about it. So this year there was a decision to include $500 million in appropriation authority system-wide for critical maintenance. For Stony Brook, under the formula that used, that totals about $65 million, or 64.7 to be exact. Although this is just appropriation authority, we are hearing, and there is some language in the budget that supports this, that there's you know, a clamping down on the actual cash expenditures we're going to be allowed to make against that appropriation authority. So we are going to be working with the legislature to make sure that there's actually cash sufficient to undertake our critical maintenance projects as the year unfolds.
And that number is a decrease from what we received 2 years ago when we did receive money. It's a decrease of about $8.5 million or
yes,
so. Which is, if you think about the challenge of having had no critical maintenance money last year and then to have an additional decrease this year is really problematic. That's a decrease for us.
So as you'll see, one of our legislative priorities is to see if we can get additional critical maintenance funding from the legislature.
And this is the chancellor's, I would say, probably number one request has been to grow critical maintenance budget, I would say. Go ahead.
Sure. The capital budget as proposed by the governor does not include capital funding for the SUNY hospitals. There was a $600 million request in, and the decision was to include no new capital funding, and that has been the case since 2008, I believe. There are other capital projects that are funded in the proposal. There's $15 million for a new College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity. The site of that new college is yet to be determined.
But the chancellor in her testimony stated that Albany, Binghamton, and Oneonta had programs that would fit well with this. So my guess is this is going to be an upstate initiative.
There's $10 million for a School of Pharmacy at Binghamton. There's $50 million for a New York Genome Center at UB.
This is in partnership with the New York Genome Center, of which Stony Brook is a member. and that money is part of the Buffalo billion, essentially, that the governor has allocated to Buffalo. Part of that Buffalo billion will be this money that comes to the University of Buffalo for the Genome Center. We have, obviously, as you heard, with Joel joining us, incredible opportunity, I think, in biomedical informatics, and I just have to state, for the record, disappointed that, because I think Stony Brook could have been a great participant, essentially, as you set up a genome center, essentially, for the state.
And finally, there's $180 million for the expansion at SUNY IT in Utica to partner with the Nano Center in Albany. So with respect to our budget advocacy plan, as I indicated, we do have a request into the governor's office that he include additional critical maintenance money for Stony Brook in the 30-day amendment period. So far, those discussions have been positive, and I'm cautiously optimistic. There is also talk in the legislature about putting together a 5-year capital plan for SUNY. We don't have a multi-year capital plan, which it makes it very difficult to plan major projects. This is a high priority for Senator Lavelle as chair of the Higher Education Committee. As I indicated, we are seeking for a legislative solution for the failure to fund the salary increases in the operating budget. We are working with the other 2 SUNY hospitals and SUNY Central to advocate for additional operating support for the hospital. That $27.7 million that the legislature added last year. Sorry, we're looking for that again. We're looking again for the legislature to put in what they put in last year to fund our EOP program. As I said, we're looking for Senator Lavelle to once again help us secure the $333,000 for the Marine Animal Lab and the additional funding for the Centers of Excellence. Of course, we'll be watching the downstate the resolution of that problem because it has the potential to impact SUNY system-wide. We are also advocating we put in a grant for, under the FEMA program for a hazardous mitigation grant to shore up the hospital curtain wall. That's a $23 million grant application. Again, we're cautiously optimistic that that will be funded. It had to first go through the executive office, so the governor's office, that had to make it on a list. We're hearing we made it on the list. Now we have to encourage FEMA that it's a worthy project to be funded.
What is a hospital curtain wall?
The exterior wall, the glass wall of the hospital, it was assembled in 1980, and because of all the storms and because of winds, etc., and because it was built with 1980 materials, is not a great wall. And so we would like to replace it with better insulated glass, better air tightness, better management of our internal environment, and protect against future storms. We are the #1 rescue place for everybody in Suffolk County. And if we go down because the curtain wall fails, big trouble.
Is that the new blue glass you're proposing for it? So is it contingent upon getting a grant?
We're probably gonna have to do it anyway. So we much prefer FEMA help us.
Yeah.
You made us admit that publicly.
It's a very important thing. Can we?
Sure. There's another new pot of money for healthcare facilities. We're looking into how we can access that money. And there's continues to be Sandy-related funds through the New York RISE program, which we've already been successful in securing an initial round of funding. And that's the end of my.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. Elaine, could you or Sam just briefly describe, I think when most people see all these articles about Long Island College Hospital, I think most people just, oh, that's a Bill de Blasio issue, it's not a Long Island issue, but you know, how does it or how might it impact Stony Brook? The issues there.
So it's a very good question, and I'm going to answer very much aware of the camera facing me here. I think that there was a very good article in Cranes recently that kind of summarized the history of Long Island College Hospital and SUNY's involvement in it. I can send the link to members of the council because I think that would do a better job in some sense that I could in explaining it. But I think through circumstances, SUNY acquired Long Island College Hospital, and so it is now part of Downstate and is associated with Downstate Medical Center. But Long Island College Hospital, as you've read, has been losing money at a very high rate, and so SUNY moved to sell Long Island College Hospital, and as part of that, pulled back services essentially from Long Island College Hospital, reduced the number of personnel that were supposed to be there, but basically stopped admitting new patients there. And what happened was a lawsuit was filed in the Supreme Court. That lawsuit then essentially was associated with an injunction that forced SUNY to keep Long Island College Hospital open. So even though now the number of patients being served there is extraordinarily small, they were forced by the injunction to keep full staff essentially there. They have laid off some individuals at Downstate Hospital because of the losses there seeming from combined. And the losses at Litch are extraordinary. It's been estimated that now the losses between Litch and Downstate may approach $500 million as the total component of losses have been said. Those are numbers that are out there in the press. I can't verify or not verify one way or
The average census is
the other.
about 25 patients in Long Island College.
There's 25 patients there, and yet it's fully staffed, essentially. So this has become a tremendous problem. There is a legal court aspect to it now. There's a very strong political aspect to it, too, because, as you know, the newly elected mayor, Mayor de Blasio, one of the platforms he ran on, in fact, he was arrested for protesting the closure of Litch. So he's had a strong effort in trying to keep Litch open. Yet there are other failing hospitals in Brooklyn as well. So there's other hospitals that really could not generate the business or have an economic model that allowed them to be successful. Litch is not alone there. So what would this mean to Stony Brook? Well, there's a loss out there, as we talked about, of $500 million. People have estimated sale of the hospital, if it could take place, might generate another $250 million, $280 million. I've seen numbers in those things, but that's speculation at this point in time. I don't know what the bids look like, or I don't even know whether a sale could go through. That would mitigate some of those losses, but not all of them. The Board of Trustees has not yet come out with a formal plan of how they will address those losses or how they will be paid for. What has been speculated has been one would be taking from the SUNY campuses. So one would be that individual SUNY campuses would have funds taken from them to help cover these losses. And in our case, we're always about 11% of whatever's taken. So if you just do every time, SUNY either takes money or gives money. I wish it was always 11% when they give money, but when they take money, we always seem to be about 11% of that. So you can imagine that could be a tremendous hit for Stony Brook, particularly in a situation that's not resolved yet. So it's not as though it's over yet, and yet those things are still pending. The second thing that's been talked about was a tuition increase. That the argument would be that if this is going to be a SUNY cost, that one way to pay for it, rather than taking from existing dollars, would be to generate an increase in tuition revenue that would cover some of those costs. But obviously that would put the burden on the students of Stony, students who attend SUNY schools essentially and their parents, as opposed to spreading it out across the whole taxpayers of the state of New York. So either one of those things is potentially certainly damaging in both situations. As Elaine said, we are really following this with extraordinary interest, communicating to our legislators. We've communicated very clearly the concerns we have about the costs that are being accumulated and how this could come back in Stony Brook and hurt Stony Brook and other SUNY campuses. And we really pushed very hard to make that message clear. But as I've said before, right now the resolution doesn't appear imminent to me, but we'll see.
Thanks. Do we know what percentage of our student population that are New York City students and from families from New York City?
Incoming class is hovers around 22%, I think.
That's
From
okay,
the
you know,
five, that would be the five.
That's
boroughs.
probably something that Mayor de Blasio isn't aware of, you know, that, 22% of our student population are his constituents. And, so it is an educational and advocacy type of challenge we have. So when you read in the papers every day, I think there was an article today, don't think it doesn't impact us, and it's just a Brooklyn issue or a New York City issue. It's a statewide and a potentially Stony Brook impact as well.
Yep.
So thanks for that.
Yep, thanks for asking.
We're running out of time, and does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Hearing no other business, we will adjourn. Our next meeting will be May 5th, and if it works out, we'll have it at the new Horreed Rec Center, and we'll do that in May. And otherwise, enjoy the last few weeks of winter. And we'll see you in the spring. And Carol, you'll send us that link to that Cranes article. Great. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Get around, thanks. See you later.